Hello class, welcome to the lecture Understanding the Lesson Plan Assignment. This lecture will help you understand the next major assignment in the course. This is called the Lesson Plan Assignment Instructions and Template, and it's due on July 21st, worth 15% of your course grade. First, you need to know how to find the assignment. On the course materials page, click on the folder called Assignments. Once you're in there, you'll see the lesson planning assignment has its own folder. Click on it. Once you're inside that folder, you'll see all the materials you need to complete the assignment as well as the link to submit it. Notice there is an exemplar in the assignment that shows a good response to each part of the lesson plan. Let's get started and review the parts of the template. First, for 1 point, there is the title of the lesson, what topic it'll be covering, what grade level, and the teacher's name. By the way, you're to write your responses or type them directly on the template and save them and submit it from the template. This is from the exemplar. The title of the exemplar lesson is Multiplying with Manipulatives. The concept or topic is working with groups to gain foundations in multiplication. It's appropriate for 2nd grade, and AN are the teacher's initials. The next thing you need to do is select an appropriate New York State Common Core standard. You may find these standards in the standards folder on the course site. Please make sure that it's Common Core. Here is the standard for the exemplar lesson. Use addition to find the total number of objects arranged in rectangular arrays with up to 5 rows and 5 columns. Write equations to express the total as a sum of equal addends. So don't try to make your lesson up and then fit the standard into it. Start with a standard you want to teach and then develop your lesson from that. You should also have a student learning objective, no more than 2, for the lesson. This is what you want students to learn, what you want them to be able to know or do. It should be age appropriate and aligned with the standard. Each objective should start with students will be able to. Sometimes you will see that as SWBAT. And then after you put that, you use an observable, measurable verb. For example, you can see a student identifying, describing, discussing, listing, explaining, reading, but you cannot see learning or understanding. So don't use the words learning, understanding, comprehending. Use action verbs that you can see, such as instead of writing, students will be able to learn the state capital of New York. Say, students will be able to identify the capital of New York. So you're looking for action verbs and ask yourself, can I see students doing that? Can I see the outcome at the end? Student learning objectives for the exemplar are students will be able to solve multiplication problems by looking at the number of items in a group and how many there are in groups there are total. And students will be able to write and solve multiplication equations using manipulatives arranged in rows and columns. Next comes a list of materials. What will you need for the lesson? List all books, props, or supplies. And make sure you have a variety of age-appropriate materials to make it interesting. Here's a list of materials for the exemplar: chalkboard, chalk, student whiteboards, markers, printed 5x5 cards. Again, these are materials, any materials you need to use during the lesson. Next comes the anticipatory set or introduction. So this is how will you introduce the lesson. It should be not just you standing up there and saying, today we're going to learn about mammals. Be something exciting and fun and interesting. Think about things that you might be excited or interested in. So not just today we're going to read a story, something that would hook the students into a lesson. So, for example, how many of you would like to be a wizard? Might be an appropriate introduction to a story about a wizard. Here's the exemplar anticipatory set or introduction. For the last portion of our day, we're going to learn something exciting. It is something you have never done or probably ever seen before. When you leave today, you can proudly boast about the clever mathematicians you have become, but that is not all. I have a surprise waiting for you at the end. Notice how this educator builds excitement and anticipation for the lesson. Make sure if you're going to use opening remarks like that, put them in quotes. If you're going to use questions, provide the questions. Whatever it is you're going to do, if you're going to dress up or use a puppet, be sure to describe accurately and clearly in detail how you will build anticipation. Make sure that you list your procedures exactly and step-by-step description of what you'll be doing in the lesson plan. It's a good idea to split them into numbered steps like a recipe. So first, number 1, do this. Number 2, I will do this. Number 3, the students will do this. Number 4, list it all. Procedures can include any of the following: pre-tests, instruction, modeling, checking for understanding, guided practice, independent practice, and again, number your procedures so it resembles a recipe. Here's an example of the detail level from the exemplar. So what did the teacher do prior to the lesson? She drew a 5x5 chart on a board, and in each box drew a seed. She covered the chart with paper, etc. What she did during the lesson. So those are the lesson procedures. And look at the detail in these steps and how clear it is. It helps to get someone, a friend or relative or someone else not involved in your project, to read through the steps and say, yes, I can follow what you're doing, or no, I can't follow it. Sometimes we get so enmeshed in our own heads that we think we're explaining things clearly, but we're really not. Be sure to list all adaptation or differentiation. So how will you adapt the lesson for any of the following populations: special needs students, gifted students, hearing, visual issue students, and physical disability students? For example, what will you do to challenge a gifted student? Here's an example from the exemplar of an adaptation. For my student that is gifted, I will assess his or her progress by having him answer the same number of questions as the other students. Questions, however, will be more challenging. Have students answer the following 5 questions. So notice this person didn't just say, I'm going to give the student harder questions. They actually gave the harder questions they would be developing for the student. How will you end the lesson? This is closure, a summary, reflection, or transition. Here's an example of a closure section from the exemplar. The lesson will end by rewarding students with a snack, peanuts and juice boxes. Multiplication is not an easy concept for young children to grasp. Therefore, a reward for remaining attentive is acceptable. However, before giving out the peanuts, mention that peanuts were once seeds before they grew. This is a mini start for an upcoming lesson. So the only thing I will critique about this particular section is you may not want to give out peanut snacks if you have someone that's allergic in your class. But certainly you could adapt this type of idea for your assignment. How will you assess the lesson? So this could be formal and informal. It could be as simple as asking questions. It could be as formal as a test. Here's an example of an assessment exemplar. So for outcome objective 1, the teacher assessed it by asked students to answer questions that are on the board, and they arranged their charts. She observed to see if they were successful. Outcome 2, they were given their own whiteboards and markers to write and solve 5 questions on their own. The important thing to notice here is a couple of things. Do you remember how this exemplar had 2 learning objectives? Well, this instructor tied each learning objective with an assessment. And so that's important. You can't just say, I'm going to give them a quiz. You have to say specifically how each objective will be assessed. The second thing that's important to note about this is that these objectives are very much aligned with the assessments. So if you go back and you look at the way the objectives are worded, this is an appropriate way to assess each objective. Another thing to include is resources. So any place that you got ideas or used materials, it's okay to use a lesson plan and adapt it from a website, but I'm going to be looking to see, did you reference that in resources? If not, that's considered plagiarism and you don't want to get involved with that. So, for example, here's a list of resources for the exemplar. Once you've finished all this, save your work on your template and submit it using the lesson plan assignment in using the link in the folder. Again, it's worth 15% of your grade, and it may be revised and resubmitted up to a week after it's graded. These are the template instructions. Again, you'll find this in the assignment folder, and that's where you're going to do your work. Questions? Please email me at nhalbrenner@mercy.edu or through the course messaging system. I hope this video has been helpful in helping you complete the assignment.